I am sure that there are aliens that are aware of what I'm doing. Probably more than one species, because they communicate by mental telepathy, and consequently they can read your mind, and you can't hide what you're thinking even. So they would know exactly what everyone's doing and what thinking, and I'm sure I'm no exception.
But just as children survive the idea of the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus when they become adult, I think that tax-paying citizens are quite capable of accepting the new and broader reality that we live in a cosmos teeming with life of various sorts. The fact that some other civilizations are more advanced than we are may be humbling, but that could be a necessary step in our survival.
It's very heavy.
When was that made?
40 or 50 years ago, back when I was in my heyday. Sometime, I guess. My interest in UFOs was not very great until 8 years ago. When I was Minister of Defense, of course, I got sighting reports, but I was too busy unifying the Canadian Armed Forces to be able to worry about them. So I wouldn't say I was a skeptic. I wasn't. I was an agnostic. I didn't know whether they were real or whether they weren't. But there was a young man in Ottawa whose name was Pierre Juno, and he started sending me things about the UFO file. One of the things he sent me one day was a book called The Day After Roswell, and I found it absolutely fascinating. While I was reading the book, my nephew said, "What are you reading?" I told him what it was, and he said, "Well, I'm a skeptic." A couple of days later, he phoned and said, I was talking to the general. The general, incidentally, was a former United States Air Force general that he had met in his aviation career. And I told him what you were reading, and he said, "Every word of it is true and more." I phoned the general. Before I could even say hello and how are you, he said, "Every word is true and more." And he said that there had, in fact, been face-to-face meetings between United States officials and extraterrestrials from other star systems. And with that assurance, I decided to go public and say, for the first time, of anyone of cabinet rank from the G8 group of countries, that UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying over your head, and said it without any restriction whatsoever. As soon as the wire systems had got the story out, information started coming in. Dozens of emails with personal experiences of how people have seen vehicles flying over their homes, and in some cases how they've been abducted. And I get these things from many places, including a lot of other countries. I would not attempt to say how many terrestrials are living on Earth at the present time. I have reports of several species that are here and have bases here. There's one species that looks something like a praying mantis. And then the short grays are the ones that you see in the cartoons. The tall grays look much different. They look more like humans. And the Nordic blondes, for example, are so similar to humans that they can walk down the street and not be detected. None of them are exactly the same. They are way ahead of us in medicine, agriculture, and still, I guess, presumably in technology. There's no question the U.S. government took this whole idea of advanced technology very seriously and started back engineering and spending a lot of money on it soon after the crashes at Roswell in 1947. They have a very interesting way of keeping things quiet, and that is everything is on a need to know. So you could be working in a lab, or you could be making some kind of piece of machinery, and you wouldn't know what it was for. And then the guy that gets it, he would only know what it fits into. And this goes all the way up to the ladder. The rating was higher, the security rating was higher than for the H-bomb. So one of the top, and still is. That's the way it works.
Which technologies are you certain that have been shared with us from extraterrestrials?
Fiber optics, microchips, Kevlar, and improved lasers, and a whole range of things where their technology was much improved or advanced from ours, light years ahead, really, I think. Those were just the obvious ones that were fed into American industry, and more have been since. There had been lots of visits to Earth, probably going back thousands of years, but the level of activity took on a new dimension after the first atomic bomb was set off at New Mexico in 1945. And all of a sudden, the number of sightings increased. And my thesis is that because they know something we don't know, and that is every atomic bomb that is put off on Earth has an effect on other parts of the cosmos. They were concerned about it. And I used this idea that the children are playing with matches. They're afraid that we're going to blow up our planet so that it would be uninhabitable both for ourselves and for visits from them. And they didn't like that idea. So they came down in larger numbers and have been taking inventory of all the American bases, the Russian bases, Chinese bases, all of the bases, doing inventories, finding out exactly where they are, where the nuclear installations, the power installations are, and all that sort of thing. For what purpose exactly, I don't know, but so that they will have the information on tap if we should start doing anything silly, that they might in fact try to intervene. And I would say, I would hope. There are a couple of well-known cases. There was one in western United States where a UFO was looking at their intercontinental ballistic missiles and putting them out of action. And this was despite precautions and fail-safe devices that were designed to make sure that that never happened. So this, of course, was a matter of great concern to the United States Air Force, and they spent months and months investigating it and trying to figure out what they had to do to, if possible, to protect the invulnerability of their bases. One of the problems I had when I first went public was newsmen saying, well, have you ever seen one? And I said, no. And then they said, well, then we can't really take you seriously. But my first actual sighting, I was at my place in Muskoka a couple of years ago for Thanksgiving. My wife Sandra said, going out to look for stars. And here was this very, very bright star right out over the bay. We both looked at it, and all of a sudden we saw it change location in the sky by 3 or 4 degrees in 3 or 4 seconds. Well, stars and satellites and airplanes don't do that. They can't do it. And it was a tremendously interesting experience, and one, of course, that confirmed my beliefs that they are real. After I went public, my daughter, who lives in the old house here at Christmas time, saw one go by her window in the cross behind the boathouse. And the family were saying that they thought that the UFOs had come to get me.